The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army.
Yesterday, June 27th, 2018, a day that will go down in infamy. But seriously, one of the most consequential days in American history. Anthony Kennedy has announced his retirement from the Supreme Court, giving Donald Trump a second nominee to the court. And this will be a consequential decision that will live with us for the next, well, let's put it like this. Kennedy was appointed by Reagan. Many of you who are listening to this were not even born when Reagan made that appointment in 1987. I was 7 years old. This is a 30-year deal that we're up against here. 30 years that we have to live with a Supreme Court pick that is more than likely going to be hyper-conservative and is going to engage in activism from the court on behalf of conservatism. And he's going to do it in the name of being a constitutionalist or an originalist. This is that asymmetrical fight that I talked about the other day, where anything whatsoever that a liberal or progressive judge may do is considered radical activism, and any radical behavior from conservatives is interpreted as the baseline or being an originalist. So a couple of decisions that are definitely on the chopping block, depending on who Donald Trump picks, and we should have no illusion that he's going to pick someone who is potentially a swing vote like Kennedy was. Kennedy was overwhelmingly conservative, but on some key issues, he was either a swing vote or chose not to hear any case or any challenges, particularly Roe versus Wade. The decision that said that a woman's right to choose is actually based on the Fourth Amendment privacy rights of a woman to have this interaction with her doctor unencumbered by the government. That the government should not be involved in what a woman discusses and does with the consultation of her doctor. You also have at risk the Obergefell versus Hodges decision that essentially legalized same-sex marriage across the country, a huge win for the LGBTQ community and the marriage equality movement. That is now at risk. He was a deciding vote in that decision. Affirmative action is at risk. I mean, and don't get it twisted. I mean, Kennedy has not been a friend of progressivism by any means. Just yesterday, the Supreme Court handed down a blow to labor unions across the country. I mean, this has been they upheld the Muslim ban, which started us on Tuesday, right? Tuesday was started an entire chain of events, a roller coaster ride of emotions, where the Muslim ban was upheld by the Supreme Court, and then we had the election in District 14 of New York with Ocasio-Cortez winning over a 10-term establishment Democrat, only to wake up the next day to see that at the end of this month, at the end of next month, July 31st, Kennedy is retiring, giving Donald Trump another appointment. There's so many things about this that are absolutely devastating. And, I see a lot of people arguing. About, finger pointing and moral virtue signaling and, just back and forth about whose fault this is. And I actually have to say that it's all of our faults collectively. I mean, I don't really care. I honestly was going to say I don't care about blame and whose fault it is, but this is a collective fault of everyone who's not a conservative. Because we have been facing a Republican Party, a conservative movement that has mastered the political art of war. And we are perpetually on our heels in the defensive position with internal bickering that seems like it's the most important thing is to win this internal bickering. Meanwhile, conservatives have consistently over the last 30 years been moving towards this moment. They would have rather that it was not Donald Trump at the helm of this, the culmination of their 30, 40-year push to undo all of the liberalism and all the progressivism of the 20th century. They would have rather it be someone like, I don't know, a Jeb Bush to be at the helm of this, but they'll tolerate it. They'll suffer it to be so. If it has to become the party of Trump in order to get all the things that they want accomplished, they'll be fine with it. Because their ultimate goal has been to uproot everything that we've accomplished over the last 100 years. And here we are dealing with this party, this movement, this ideology that are masters of propaganda. They are masters of hypocrisy. And the best that we can do on our side is almost to just point out their hypocrisy. Meanwhile, and that's not literally the best that we could do, but it seems as though that's all we've done, is to point out the hypocrisy as if they actually care. They know they're hypocrites. They know exactly what they're doing. They have mastered a Machiavellian form of politics, and we on the left are those who are not inside of those who are not Republicans, which is such a broad range from center right to all the way to far left. But it's all of our faults that we're at this point now, because we collectively have failed. I don't care about the 2016 election. We actually lost this before the 2016 election. As much as I care about the 2016 election, that's not the point that we lost this. Obama is responsible for this. Hillary Clinton is responsible for this. Bernie Sanders is responsible for this. You're responsible for this. I'm responsible for this. All of us collectively, because we were not prepared collectively for what was happening in the conservative movement. Even though we saw it happening right before our eyes. We saw their Machiavellianism. We saw their complete disregard for hypocrisy while holding up the mantle of morality. We saw this, and it took all of us too long to calibrate for their games. We lost this a long time ago. We lost this when Barack Obama was bringing, quote unquote, hope and change. Meanwhile, Republicans were fighting at a level that we haven't seen since the civil rights movement, the reaction to the anti-civil rights movement. They fought with a bitter vitriol, with racism. And how I know it's all of our fault, because just yesterday when Bernie Sanders, people, got a little sideways with me when I said I'm done with Bernie Sanders. But let me tell you why. Yesterday, when Bernie Sanders was asked about civility and asked about the restaurant in D.C. that refused to serve Sarah Huckabee Sanders, he answered the question saying that, basically saying everyone should be able to get a meal. And as innocuous as that sounds, that best exemplifies the problem. Follow me here. On a day where the Republicans are burning down this house, they are getting ready to make changes that are going to affect us for the next 30 years. I will have a full white beard before we can undo all the stuff that Donald Trump is getting ready to set in motion. And on a day like that, Republicans, conservatives still have us playing the civility game. Basically, they have us playing in this side conversation that has nothing to do with anything of any significance. We're over here going back and forth about whether or not we should be civil while they are getting ready to get a new Supreme Court justice. Bernie Sanders should have rejected the premise of the question and spoke to the significance of this moment and how ridiculous that question is, and that we will not be held to another standard that the Republicans don't hold themselves to, and that the media should be embarrassed with themselves asking us a question on a day like that. But instead of doing that, Bernie Sanders just said, well, I think everyone should have a meal to eat. We can't keep playing by their terms. We can't keep playing their game. And if we do, then it's already too late because we don't have the infrastructure that they do. We don't have the media apparatuses like they do. We don't have billionaires just pouring money into every Tom, Dick, and Charlie Kirk in order to spread their propaganda. And here we are playing inside of the framework that they're giving us to play in, to argue in. Meanwhile, they're getting ready. They're getting another Supreme Court pick. That's part 1 of today's episode. To get the full episode, go to patreon.com/the BPD show and become a patron today.